start working on assignment 1, assuming that you already have a Springboot tool already where you can create a project. So let's the description of the environment is described here in this set of slides. That presumably you might already have a JDK installed. That you might already have a Maven installed, that you might already have a Springboot deployed on your machine, so you can create projects. And we don't need MySQL just yet. We'll need that in a couple weeks. If you don't like Eclipse, I don't suggest you install the Springboot tool suite. IntelliJ will work just fine. We won't need Node.js for another couple of weeks. MongoDB, we won't need that for later in the semester, so we can wait on that. You should have a GitHub client. So let's get started. Let's create our project that we're going to be using for the rest of the semester. So assuming that you have a Spring Boot already installed on your machine, you can create a brand new project by using this command line. So let's head over to our local directory, and we can go into our webdev, and here we can go to 2020 and create a directory for where we're going to be working throughout the semester. So we'll call CS5610. And in here, we're going to create our project, right? So this will be your Spring init dependencies web, right? That's going to create a Spring Boot project based on a Maven template, right? And it's going to also declare web as a dependency set of libraries that are going to allow us to start a Tomcat server that can host our HTML, our CSS, our JavaScript, so that we can fetch HTML content, right? And the name of the application. So I'm going to call it, the naming convention that I might want you to follow is some acronym for the course, WebDev, then the semester that we're in, then the perhaps a username that will describe who you are, and then followed by what is it that this project is, a very short description. It's a server, and it's a Java server. Later on, we're going to create a Node.js server. To distinguish these two servers, I'm going to say that this is a Java server. All right. Later on, we'll have a Node version of this. Okay. So we're going to do that. It's going to fail. Why is it failing? Oh, I'm not connected to the web. Why am I not connected? And why do I have two new waves? Okay, now I'm connected. Let's try that again. Okay, so it's copying the template and extracted it to the local directory structure. We can see that right now we have a directory structure in there. If I go in there, we'll and look at the content, we'll see that indeed this is a Maven project, right? It's a POM file. This is what declares this project as a Maven project. POM stands for Project Object Model, right? That describes this project and all the dependencies, any libraries that this project depends on. So when we compile and build, right, it'll download any libraries that this project needs. In particular, it'll need all the Tomcat server libraries will have to be downloaded so that we can get a server up and running. Then all the source code will be under SRC. We have noticed that we have a git ignore. So it looks like this is already a repository with actually probably not. We're missing .git. So let's initialize that in here. So git init. So now we should have a .git directory that makes this also a Git repository, right? So that we can keep track of all the files that we are going to be using. All right. Okay, so we have that. We can now open this project with our favorite IDE. So we can say open and navigate to that directory, Januzzi, webdev, webdev 2020, CS5610, and there's our project. Open it up. So the IDE is going to parse the content, and it's going to recognize that it's indeed it's a Maven project, and it's going to create the folder structure here that we might be already familiar with, this being a Maven project. Under source is where we're going to be spending most of our time creating all the source code. A little later on, we'll work under the Java directory. We won't be using Java for a bit, not quite yet. Any dependencies with database connections, if we're going to use MySQL, will be declared under resources. We don't need that yet, just now. We're only going to be working with static HTML and static CSS for this first assignment. To configure Tomcat to host our content, we're going to have to create a directory under the main, right, that has to be called web app. It has to have that specific name. Right? This is where we're going to put in here all our static content, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, just ASCII files, images would go in here. Anything that we want to make publicly available for folks to be able to retrieve through a browser. Yes? When they visit our server at localhost or our wherever IP address is, and they hit our port, this is where when they ask for a file from the browser, this is the directory that's going to have all the content in there. Right? In here we're going to put a file, our very first HTML file. We'll call it index.html. And it's asking us, do we want? It saw that we have a Git repository, and says, do you want me to add these files to the repository automatically? And I'll say yes. Do this for every file, every new file that I create. So don't ask me again. So yes, add the file. And it creates a boilerplate starting HTML file with all the required set of HTML tags here. Notice that it declares the document as an HTML document. It has the root element. I'm gonna tab this so it's a little bit more readable. Notice that it has an opening HTML tag at the top, right? So these are the 3 required tags that you need in an HTML document. So this is a root HTML element that contains 2 other elements, the head element, and we have the body element, right? The head element is used for declaring meta information, who the author of this document is, when it was created, what dependencies does this document have with other documents, things like that, or meta information about this document. The actual content that gets displayed by the browser is contained inside of the body element, okay? So in the, let's start, so here in the body, we can do something simple as just saying, hello world, okay? Just some really, really trivial dummy content, all right? Our very first hello world HTML file. We'll save that, right? And the instructions in setting up the environment walk you through doing this, creating the directory, creating an index file. Here I'm doing it from the IDE. I believe the instructions ask you to do it from the command line. Either one is fine, right? All right, so we have that. We can go back to our here on the command line, and we can see that we can say git status. We see that we have a couple of files in here. Notice that since we have a Git repository, it has detected that we have a brand new file in the index file, plus all these other files, that we need to commit and add to the repository. Anyway, we can compile now and build this project by saying maven clean install. This is the maven command that should be available once you install Maven, right? It's going to look at the POM file. The POM file says that we should have a Tomcat server and whatnot. So this is going to build the entire project, and it's going to create an executable. Create an executable in the form in the format of a jar file, of a Java jar file that will contain all the classes that can be executed. The build was successful, and what it'll do is that it will create a brand new directory, this target directory, right here, that was not there before, right? And it will put the results of the build of your project inside of that target. We can see the content of the target directory. There's a whole bunch of things here. The only really thing that we care about is this jar file, right? This jar file, right? This jar file contains all the build linked classes, right? All the dependencies in one single container, right? There's tons of stuff in there, and it declares a main starting file, right? That has been configured as the entry point of the application, right? And we can run it. We can say Java jar, everything, all the commands that I'm running are always from the root of the directory of the project, right? Remember that all these commands are from the root of the project. Yes, the Maven clean install, the starting of the project, any commits to our Git repository. It's a good, it's easier if you do all these commands from the root of the project. Yes, right. So I'm going to run this. I'm going to say Java jar. I'm going to run that jar, and the jar is in the target, and it's and there it is. This is the jar. I'm going to run that. This is going to start up the Tomcat server, and it's going to start listening at port 8080. That's a very common default port where Java server's listening at. It's a very common one. Just like Node.js projects are typically listened on port 3000. Typical Angular servers listen at 4200. Each framework chooses a very common port where developers commonly meet at. In Java, it's very common to use port 8080, right? All right, so now we have a server listening at port 8080. We can now hit this server with a browser because it's listening there. Let's go fetch a browser. So we can go here, and now we can go http://localhost, right? That's my current machine, yeah. And it's listening at port : 8080. So this slash, right? That slash is if I hit it like this, right? The server will respond. Says, "Ooh, there's a request coming in from a browser, right? At that port that I'm listening at. What do you want?" And so that slash there, that last slash in this URL, is mapped physically to that web app directory that we created, right? So that web app directory. The server, when it gets this request, it says slash, it says, "Oh, you want something from the web app directory. What do you want from the web app directory?" We can say, "Oh, well, give me that index file I just created," right, in that web app directory. So if we hit that, notice that the server says, "Oh, let me go fetch that file for you, and I'll send it back to you," right? And this is what we get, right? The hello world content that we created just a few minutes ago. Everybody okay? Right? Notice that this is live. If I go back and I change this, hello world from CS 5610, and I save this, and I go back and refresh, this is live, right? I can go back and forth, right, and make changes to my HTML, and I can see my results right away on my browser. Everybody good? All right, so you'll find yourself during the next week or so going back and forth, right, editing your HTML, going to see how it looks like on the browser, refreshing your page, and so on and so forth. Everybody, yes? All right, excellent. We have our first page. The only other thing that I want to mention is that index.html, the name of that file is a standard name, right? It means something, right? Like the name suggests, the historical use of the index file was to index the content of a directory, right? To be used as an index of a book, right? Where you go at the back of a book and say, "Oh, what's the content? What does this book contain?" Yes, and then tell you where to find certain things at what page. Correct. So same thing in the index. The index was supposed to be used as a means of references or links to the rest of the content of the directory. Yes, right. So it's a standard name, index.html. The server, the way the server will behave is that if you don't ask for anything, if you don't ask for anything in particular, it will assume that you want the index page, right? That's the default thing that the server will respond to you. If there is a file called index.html, that's what it will return for you by default. So if I refresh this without the index page, notice that I still get the index page. Make sense? Right? And presumably it will give links and the rest of the content of that directory. Everybody good? All right, excellent.